The crate was Pittie's universe, dark, damp, and barely big enough for him to turn around. His legs had grown stiff and weak from disuse, and his once vibrant fur had dulled into patches of gray. No toys, no walks, no sunlight, just the occasional clatter of a bowl being shoved through the bars and the cold silence that followed. Pittie had no name, no identity, just a pair of brown eyes that held onto one last thing: hope. Outside the crate, the world spun on. People laughed, lived, loved, and forgot about the animals trapped behind closed doors. But not everyone had forgotten. 2 towns over, a woman named Clara was scrolling through social media, absent-mindedly swiping past pictures of vacations, birthdays, and cute kittens, until one image made her stop cold. A photo posted by a small rescue organization showed a pit bull curled in on himself in a crate, his head low, ribs visible, and eyes pleading for something he couldn't name. The caption read, "This is Pittie. He spent all 6 years of his life in this crate. We rescued him yesterday. He's never been outside." Clara stared at the photo for a long time. There was something in Pittie's eyes. Something haunting, raw, and deeply familiar. She didn't know why, but she knew in that instant she had to meet him. 3 days later, Clara pulled into the gravel driveway of the rescue center, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She had no idea what to expect. She wasn't even sure if Pittie would want anything to do with her. But something deeper than logic had driven her here. The volunteer met her at the door, a kind-faced man named Greg. "You're here for Pittie?" he asked, surprised. "You're the first one to ask about him." They walked through the facility, past barking kennels and wagging tails, until they reached the end of the hallway where a single room held one quiet, still figure. Pittie was curled up in the corner of a padded enclosure. Not a crate anymore, but still small, still isolated. He didn't get up when they entered. He didn't even lift his head. "He's afraid of people," Greg whispered. "Pittie doesn't know what kindness is. He flinches if we move too fast." Clara said nothing. She knelt down on the floor and just sat, legs crossed, palms open. She didn't call out to Pittie or try to touch him. She just breathed. Minutes passed. Long, quiet minutes. Then, slowly, so slowly, Pittie lifted his head. His eyes met hers. He stared. She didn't blink. Then, Pittie stood shakily, unsteadily, and took one step toward her. And then another. And then, without a sound, he collapsed into her lap. Greg blinked. "He's never done that before." Clara's eyes welled up. Her arms wrapped around Pittie instinctively, and she whispered, "I'm here. You're safe. I promise." From that moment on, the two were inseparable. The rescue approved the adoption after a home check, and Pittie went home with Clara a week later. The first few days were hard. Pittie didn't understand the concept of outside. He was terrified of the open door. The wind frightened him, grass confused him. He had never climbed stairs, had never seen a mirror, had never heard laughter that wasn't followed by anger. But Clara was patient. She laid beside Pittie on the floor when he couldn't sleep. She coaxed him outside with treats and soft words. She celebrated every tiny victory: his first tail wag, his first nap on the couch, the first time he trotted to the door on his own. And then one morning, something happened. It was sunny. The front door was open, screen shut. Pittie was lying near it, his head tilted as the wind rustled the trees. Clara stood in the kitchen, watching. Pittie looked over his shoulder at her and wagged his tail. It was subtle, a slow, unsure wag, but it was there. And then, as if making a decision, Pittie walked toward her, nudged her hand with his nose, and licked her fingers. She burst into tears. From that day forward, everything changed. Pittie began to explore. He discovered that toys squeaked, that couches were for naps, and that belly rubs were real and glorious. He still had nightmares, sometimes would cry out in his sleep or cower when someone moved too fast. But now, he had a safe place to run to, a lap to crawl into, a name whispered with love. And then there were the walks. Clara started taking Pittie out in the early mornings when the world was quiet. At first, he was unsure, his movements stiff and cautious. But then he began to enjoy them, ears perked, nose to the wind, tail up. One morning, they passed a little boy playing in a front yard. The boy, seeing the big pit bull, gasped and froze. His mother moved to pull him back, but Pittie simply sat down, tail wagging. Clara knelt beside him and said, "It's okay, he's gentle." The mother hesitated. The boy slowly stepped forward. Pittie didn't move. The boy reached out and Pittie licked his hand. A smile lit up the child's face. The mother's shoulders relaxed. That moment changed something in Clara. She realized Pittie's story was more than one of rescue. It was one of redemption, of breaking stereotypes, of showing the world what love could do to a broken spirit. Clara started posting updates, online photos, and stories of Pittie's progress. His fan base grew. People who had feared pit bulls wrote to say they'd changed their minds. Other rescues were inspired. Donations increased. Other long-neglected dogs found homes. Pittie had unknowingly become an ambassador for second chances, for misunderstood breeds, for the power of love. But to Clara, Pittie wasn't a symbol, he was her heart. One night, a storm rolled in. Thunder shook the windows. Pittie panicked, trembling, trying to hide under the bed. Clara crawled under with him, wrapped her arms around his quaking body, and whispered stories until he fell asleep. When the morning sun rose, Pittie crawled out, head high, and walked into the living room like a soldier returning from battle. He was healing. Months passed. Pittie's fur grew glossy. His muscles filled in. He no longer flinched at loud noises. He barked when someone came to the door. He napped belly up in the sunshine. Pittie was a dog now, not a prisoner. And one evening, as Clara sat on the porch, Pittie curled beside her, head on her lap. She stroked his ears and whispered, "You chose me, didn't you?" Pittie's tail thumped once. She smiled, "And I'll choose you. Every single day." From forgotten crate to front porch sunsets. Pittie's journey wasn't just about freedom. It was about what happens when a soul locked away for a lifetime finds someone who refuses to look away. Pittie had never known love until he picked the one person who would never let him go.